Let's talk about the news. As soon as my monitoring alarms calm down, what just happened? Oh, workstation went to sleep. That's fine. Okay. Um, I'm going to focus everything today on not just ICE, but why you need proper candidates, proper training, proper management, proper rules and regulations, procedures, rule of law, and how not just ICE, the entire federal government is failing right now. And yes, we could put all the onus on dear leader porn star Humper, but it goes deeper than that. So let's get into it. So yeah, I'll make a blanket statement here. And if we want to not have violence in the street all the way up to, A24's Civil War, we need to stand down ICE and disband it. Okay. It is not a proper police unit. It's not even close. Okay. Um, I was sitting at lunch the other day at one of my favorite gastro pubs. They have a great winter chicken pot pie, so I wanted to get it before it goes off the menu again. um, and I was sitting there when my wife had to step away from the table for a minute, and I went through the article about that 82nd Airborne veteran who applied for ICE, and a 38-year-old woman, yes, a veteran, 82nd Airborne. I think she was EOD, if I remember correctly, with a 25-year gap between military and her application to ICE, um, walks in to a job fair. Um, you got to read the article. It sounded like a Tony Robbins like pump up, seminar, but they were hiring people to work for Homeland Security, Border Patrol, ICE, all that kind of stuff. So basically, this veteran spends, a total of a couple of hours and a 6-minute interview when she finally gets to talk to a human and sit down. And even though she's a critic of the regime, she has a very unusual last name. So you Google search her very critical blog of that's against dear leader, against the nationalist, against the direction of the country. We're going under these clowns. She's a harsh critic of the government, like many veterans are, like I am. She had a 25-year gap. She's not um she's not too old to be a cop. Like I saw guys get out of the military, retired, and get into police work in their 40s, and it worked out fine. But she was definitely an older candidate. But the big thing is, she's a connoisseur of cannabis. And I feel you. Where the hell's my vape pen? It's around here somewhere. I had to plug it in to recharge it. Oh, there it is. And she had just she was in New York State where cannabis is completely legal. She just got baked a couple of days before she went down there to go through this so she could write about it as a independent journalist. And so she knows she's going to fail the urinalysis test, the piss test. She's going to fail, but she wanted to go through it, see what it was like, write up something that. Yeah, she went to LabCorp. She peed in the cup. They tested it. She come back negative. A self-admitted marijuana user at whatever level, I don't know. I couldn't pass a test in shit a year and a half if I stopped using today because I have edibles to deal with pain from the accident. It's a lot better than the muscle relaxers or the opioids. Um, but yeah, she's not the ideal candidate. Shouldn't have passed a urinalysis test. And basically, and after about a 6-minute interview, they offered her a job in ICE. So what does that tell us? It tells us they have no idea who the hell they're hiring. That's a problem. Okay. This is so screwed up at this point. You cannot fix ICE if you wanted to. You can't do what they're just did or what they're continuing to do and expect you're going to have a cogent law enforcement agency. One, their point was never law enforcement. They don't care about law enforcement. They have animus and grievance, and they want to exercise it by cosplaying police. Now, if we did this right, because you look around the world right now, leaders are being held accountable in numerous countries right now for all sorts of things. The Yoon, the South Korean ex-president, they tossed out and then arrested because he tried to throw the country into martial law and take over. And South Korea's got a really bad history with military coups. So um, the South Koreans aren't playing. The South Korean prosecutors came back this week. They want the death penalty for Yoon. Okay. He tried an illegal coup, and what ticked off the prosecutors was he wrote up false memos and false evidence to support his declaration of martial law. Okay. Same way, by the way, same way Dear Leader Pornstar Humper and Bovino and Stephen Miller and Marco Rubio, they're all lying through their ass. And they know they're lying. Okay. Here's the biggest thing I found out this week. The intelligence agencies are not concerned with Tren de Agua, the alleged gang that has overtaken America, owns Chicago and Boulder, and has invaded, quote unquote, invaded America. Okay. That's bullshit. Not in my opinion. That's the intelligence agencies. So you're telling me that FBI, CI, counterintelligence, the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the CIA aren't worried. Oh, by the way, there's more three-letter agencies. You're just not allowed to know who they are. Um, Nobody seems to be that concerned with these jerk-offs. But since we have the Epstein files and we need a good distraction, we are just going to take a name and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until people believe the lie is a truth. Because with this many thousands of people on the street working for ICE and Border Patrol right now, and you cannot locate any terrorist gang members of Venezuela, that's a fucking clue. When you're blowing up a 6-month baby in Minneapolis, Minnesota with a goddamn flashbang and a tear gas canister, yet you still haven't found the leaders at Tren de Agua, it tells me what you're really doing. This is not about law enforcement. This is about national politics turned into grievance. Because the basis of nationalist politics is authoritarianism, hatred, and using any power structure you can possibly get your fingers on to further your grasp on power. And that's all they're looking for. Okay. That is literally all they're looking for. It's not like they don't know Dear Leader was convicted in a New York court as a business fraud. Over 30 counts. Not only was he became an adjudicated rapist in civil court, he was then found to defame the victim and was given an additional fine. The fine was so big, the judge went, this happened. The judge in the settlement for E. Jean Carroll, the judge goes, what's the M stand for? The foreman handed the jury decision to him. He goes, what's the M stand for? Million, Your Honor. Holy shit. The jury was not happy with Donald J. Trump, okay? So we know all the shit. We know he's in the, not that he's in the Epstein files, he practically is the Epstein files. Okay? So that's why we have so many people in the street. And they're just trying to pick a fight. It's not just trolling. They're literally looking to start a violent conversation. a riotous condition so they can react even harsher. Now, we seem to be right now, we seem to be the only country on earth other than Hungary, Russia, and China and North Korea. Not good company, by the way. Uh, in El Salvador, because that prick's a little gangster. Um, Gangster authoritarian, somewhat commie. Um, we're in bad company, but the rest of the world seems to know, like, well, yeah, your leaders can't just up and commit crimes because they think they're a demigod. That's not a thing unless you're already in a substandard state, substandard nation state. A nation state that's no longer run by institutions, it's run by grievance and personality. And that's the stage we're at right now. Because they're telling you things that are remarkably untrue that can be fact checked as untrue in less than 1 minute. Like, I am so sick and tired of people, on the right and some people not on the right going, oh my God, well, maybe the tariffs work because we got $18 trillion worth of investment. No, we did not. We did not receive $18 trillion in investment in 1 year. That would have melted down the economy. Shit. A gallon, if we put that much money into the economy at worst and all that money was chasing the same commodity and supply, oh my God. A freaking gallon of diesel at a job site would be like $300 a gallon. A yard of cement would be 25 times more expensive than it is today. Okay. It's absurd to claim you've made $18 trillion in 1 year. It's not even mathematically possible. But he just repeated it yesterday like it's the absolute God's truth, and it's the 100th time he said it. He is absolutely convinced he's received $18 trillion. No, we haven't. We made about $1 trillion. We ripped off another said couple of billion from Venezuela. And oh, did you hear who we parked the money with? We moved the money to Qatar so it wouldn't be under the review of the DOJ or Congress here in the United States. And then they immediately turned that oil and money and proceeds over to dear leader's biggest campaign donor. Is anybody surprised? Why do I have light streaks in my face here? I'm trying to close my blinds here. Um, Sunning sun. uh, if we were a functional society right now, a functional nation state right now, Trump would have been impeached. Vance would have been impeached. Good 20% of Congress would have been recalled by the voters in grassroots efforts. We'd already have a special prosecutor. We'd have impeached Nome. We'd have fired Bovino in Holland. There'd have been a special prosecutor already, and we had already been halfway through criminal charges for some of these people. But we're not a functional nation state right now, and that's a real problem. We love telling other countries that you need to bring your game up and you need to be a modern country and you need to get your shit together. Okay, we've regressed so far. Most countries, as far as governance goes, is well ahead of us. We cannot currently address our own problems. And ICE is just one of them, but that's what I want to talk about today. So let's talk about actually disbanding ICE and why I think you need to do it. Let me tell you the example because we've done it here on the West Coast. Back in my day, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I'm working midnight shift. And the watch commander gets on the desk phone and hits our frequency and says, all units return to the watch commander's office. And we're like, oh shit, somebody's in trouble. Somebody just did something. Somebody did, but fortunately it was none of us. We were fine. Yeah, the watch commander wanted us to hear it from him. He was our most senior sergeant. He was 340, so he had the lowest 40 number, so he's the most senior sergeant. He was a cop for shit, I think 32 years. Um, really smart guy, really strict. Um, a guy you did not want to get in trouble with as your watch commander because he would do you. Yeah, he didn't tolerate misbehavior at all. He didn't go out of his way to screw officers or anything, but yeah, you didn't want to do a real fuck up on his ship. You're going to get in trouble. And he's going to do you and report you to the lieutenant and the captain. So he sits us down and says, hey, everybody grab a Coke or a coffee. I want to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And he sits us down and he goes, I wanted to be the one to tell you this. A department in our greater area, it was a bit north of us, but it was still related to us because, it's nearby law enforcement. The State Department of Justice and the state police arrived en masse in a city north of us. This was East Palo Alto. And DOJ showed up with a court order and arrest warrants and search warrants. What happened was the officers of that department no longer worked for the city council or the city manager. They worked for the gangs. And I'm not being hyperbolic. They literally worked for the gangs. They were only paid by the city. DOJ showed up. They found the supervisors. They arrested them. They served a search warrant. They went through the department. They went through several people's vehicles and homes. They arrested a bunch of them. And then they were told they were all relieved of duty. As of tonight, there is no city department. We just shut it down. State police are taking over. State police and highway patrol, depending on the staffing. Okay. Now, our reaction was good, fantastic. Okay. We knew those guys were twats. I knew in the police academy, those bastards were up to no good. They had a bad reputation. Bad reputation. So were we upset at all when we heard many of them got arrested and they literally just closed the city police department and sent the state police in as the substitute force until they could figure out what to do with the sheriff and the city and everybody else? Because sheriff has purview. Once it's all settled, the legal thing with the state is settled, then the sheriff, because it's his county, he could come in, send his own deputies in if he didn't have the staff, and he said, "Oh yeah, please let the state police do it because I don't have enough people to do it." But we did not see the relieving of an entire police department as a problem. We saw it as a win. Okay, you taking bribe from gang members, and it becomes the default behavior in the department. Y'all got to go, and so does the department. You need to raise the department, knock it down to its foundation, and rebuild it in whole. Okay? That is exactly what you need to do with ICE. There was no going to that police department going, okay, guys, can you stop making more money with the gangs than the city pays you in salary and overtime and benefits? And can you suddenly change your whole, fucked up unethical behavior and actually follow the law? No, there was zero chances of that. The department had turned into a gang. And this is not the only time I saw this. We had an MP unit when I was in the Army dealing fucking drugs in the barracks. Our UC team, we sent in our female undercover, and we bought. And then we went to the MP captain. We said, guess who we just got to buy from? And he was like, oh shit, don't tell me. I'm going, yeah, A, B, C, and D. By the time the first sergeant found out, which was about 10 minutes later, all hell broke loose. The captain arrested his own troops personally. He was the one that walked up and placed them under apprehension. Okay. So I don't got a problem with getting rid of dirty cops. None. Zero. Zero. Okay. Hey, I was in the army. You got caught in a piss test because you did cocaine? Sayonara. Never talking to you again. I don't care what the circumstances are. If you can't do the job, get the fuck out of the job. You don't belong here. You're just going to cause problems. So when I see people online, whether it's Stewart from the Lincoln Project or Pundit A, B, or C, or somebody here on Substack, and they're going, well, we can't exactly disband ICE because, the voters, that will be a dumb thing with the voters. Then we need to school the voters, especially the voters, the 66% of them that never showed up to the fucking polls last midterm. I've been telling you this. The turnout was only 44% in 2022. You need to convince the voters who vote and the voters who don't vote but are registered to get their heads clearly out of their ass. You don't let a government agency like this exist. You disband it. You relieve them of duty. Like one of the best things we did during World War II, and this is from a military historian I like, war college professor. He was like, one of the best things we did, actually two professors said that, said this, military professors. Look, the best thing we did in World War II is relieve a shit ton of commissioned officers. Now, one general took it too far. He kept firing all his lieutenant colonels, his battalion commanders, and finally General Smith flew to England and goes, you fire one more fucking colonel, I'll fire you. But in general, there was a lot of leeway to senior officers to weed out the people who couldn't get the job done. In the military, you can be relieved in a half a second, regardless of your rank. Patricia says, we never voted for ICE and the undertrained thugs paid with our tax dollars. Here, take my money and shoot me? Hell no. Yeah, that's how everybody's feeling. Nobody asked for this. Like one of the smart posts I saw this week was what ICE used to look like, blue windbreakers, tie, dress shirt, badge on a chain. Like dog tag chain, you get the badge. Okay, hey, we researched, you got arrested for doing this. You can't be here anymore unless you got an emergency. We're going to take you to county jail until the Border Patrol truck comes get you. Then we're going to take you down to, Chula Vista. They're going to do your out processing, and then you're going to go back over the border. Okay. It wasn't like calling the Border Patrol or immigration enforcement. That was such a low key thing back in my day. And again, I worked in probably the highest county per capita of immigrants in the country. Massive amounts of farm labor. The breadbasket of North America and half the world. And it was so low key. Like the van would show up. Hey, what do you got? This guy, he got into a fight, pulled a knife. I mean, if you just got into a fight and would have thrown him in the drunk tank and ignored him. But yeah, he pulled a weapon. So, not cool. Besides, either we call immigration control or the bailiff is in court when he shows up to court. Because as soon as he finds out you had a weapon and you committed a felony, yeah, bye-bye. But again, that's nothing to say what the hell is going on in Minneapolis or Portland or wherever else they're invading. I don't see how you can fix this. Most of these people are not trained. That's obvious. Watching some of these videos online, they have no unarmed skills. They don't know how to use their less than lethal tools, especially those fucking launchers. Take those goddamn launchers away from 'em, or there better be a state or federal prosecutor that charges them with aggravated battery the next time they shoot a 40 mil at someone's fucking head. That is not the way you deploy that weapon, and the problem is, in this case, they don't know it because they were never trained. Like, this is the abuse cycle happening all over again. We saw this after 9/11 with the local police. They wanted to use every weapon every time. They ran around claiming they didn't have qualified immunity, they had blanket immunity. No, you don't have blanket immunity. LAPD just learned that this week. San Jose learned it the week before. They shot a guy outside of Taqueria that was not even the suspect, and everybody in the crowd was telling them that. One guy shot, all the other cops were like, "What the hell are you doing?" Yeah, the federal judge just pulled immunity from all the officers involved. So if you think you're up in Minnesota or out in Portland or heading to Memphis or Boston, and you just have free reign to do anything the fuck you want because you have blanket immunity, no, no, you do not. Qualified immunity is a very specific thing. Now, it's way over granted. Before we started having the BLM protest problems, everything, it was way over granted. Okay. But this is what qualified immunity is really for. Okay. And I'll use a real circumstance. This was back, I think, in the late 90s. Two young women, both 16, 17 years old. Guy pulled over in a Chevy Impala, whipped out a gun, forced him into the car, kidnapped both of them. Well, sitting across the street, the guy never saw him, was the San Diego County Sheriff. So the San Diego County Sheriff kept it cool. It was like, okay, this guy's armed. I'm going to get some cars. Da, da, da. This guy weaves off to a side street. The deputy comes up with his 357, and the guy goes to grab one of the girls as a hostage. He puts 4 rounds in his face and his chest at point blank range. Doesn't put a scratch on the two girls. Okay. The family of the suspect tried to sue San Diego County, and the judge was like, "What? He, this was a kidnapping in progress with a gun. The deputy is supposed to shoot him." Yes, and there's some cases, yes, we are supposed to shoot them. As ugly as that sounds, that's true. Like, you do not want to be a fleeing murder suspect in a lot of states in the United States, especially out here. If you're in custody for 187 murder and you attempt to flee, we can legally and constitutionally shoot you in the back. And we will. We had a deputy who did not shoot a 187 suspect. My watch commander filed a complaint with the sheriff's department against her. You should have capped that guy. That was a fleeing murder suspect. That's the only time we get to do it. And you should have done it. Okay. You go grab a hostage, you're going to get shot. Okay. Now, what shouldn't happen after an in progress kidnapping with a gun is some idiot lawyer can't come up and go, "Well, I'm suing the officer, the deputy, and suing his employer because, he committed some egregious tort." No, that's in line with his duty. It was one of the cleanest shoots I've ever heard of. The other one was the warehouse robbery. This is just before I went to the academy. I was still in the army, but I was in the same area, but it happened. Warehouse robbery. One of the last generation's officer got into a gun battle with 3 armed burglars behind a warehouse. He had a 41 mag, so when you only had to hit him once, he won the gunfight. He took a couple of hits, got hurt real bad, but he won the gunfight. Can you imagine 3 burglars' families suing a city because they were in progress doing a burglary / armed robbery / attempted murder of a peace officer? No, you don't get you don't get to sue over that. Now, the family in Minnesota had the grenades tossed into their minivan and hurt 6 of their kids. Please find a good lawyer. that you can sue over because that has nothing to do with anything. You had no legal right just because that family was in your mere presence to consider them a threat. That's horseshit. Or the other video where the guy is literally getting his face repeatedly smashed into the asphalt. Okay, that is not proper arrest procedure. That is not proper unarmed defense and restraint techniques. Okay. And of course, do they know any proper restraint techniques? No, because they were never trained. They were literally handed a gun and a badge and a $50,000 bonus check, handed a plate carrier, a mask, and told to wreak havoc. They wanted to let loose the dogs of war, unless you watch Archer, the hogs of war. Whatever, found animal of war, Lana. Yeah, the whole thing was never about law enforcement. Never, ever, not for a fucking second. Because if it was about law enforcement, you'd be doing this a whole different way. As I know, I did it for 14 years. And I went after targets that would scare some of these guys. When you don't have training, now let me express a little frustration, possibly a little anger. And this goes out to my friends, my neighbors, my countrymen who happen to vote Democrat. Please fucking stop voting for Chuck Schumer. For the sake of everyone in this country, please stop voting for Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, backed up by Cory Booker. The problem is they need to be retrained. No, asshole. They weren't trained in the first place. Because even if the ones that went through the 6-week whatever camp they had, they ain't trained. My training when I went to the civilian side was 50, no, 30, 38 weeks, including the academy and the FTO program, the field training officer program, where you're actually supervised by a senior peace officer. And they, and that, some departments call them corporals. We just called them FTOs. We didn't use a lot of military ranks to separate everybody. We just had a couple, like sergeant, lieutenant. So we had FTOs, and they would write you up for fucking up. They would write reports at the end of your training, why or why not you should or should not be a cop. And I knew guys who did FTO that at the end of the FTO program, one of my close friends, Jeff, he was an FTO, not just an FTO officer, he was the FTO supervisor for years. When he was an FTO, he wrote a 38-page memo telling why the guy he just supervised in his field training should never, ever, 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 ever be a cop. We should fire him, and we should give him a negative reference. He should not be working in law enforcement. Okay, that's the way. Boy Scouts had better training. Hey, I was a Cub Scout when I was a kid. That's true. Yeah, but back in the day, we used to weed people out left and right. Okay, at the academy, we walked up to the tech sergeants and said, "Hey, that guy right there should not be a cop." 3 of us walked up to him. One, an already level 1 reserve officer that wanted to go full time, a Navy veteran with 13 years in the Navy, and me, 6 years in the military police, MPI, and CID. Okay. All 3 of us walked up to the tech sergeant and went, "That clown needs to go. He can't take a test. He doesn't understand the concepts, and he just regurgitates answer. He can't think through the problem space." His physical fitness was okay. It was middle of the pack. You know, nobody was going to keep up with the top of the pack. The top of the pack were all the military guys. And even with me, I was so far behind the best runner at the academy because he was a LERP and a marathon runner on the Marine marathon team, long range patrol. All long range patrol means is you're a marathon runner with a gun. Um, because how you start this whole process is you start it with vetted candidates. Okay. You have to have a minimum standard that is quite strict. And it has to be done in a way that you are purposely weeding people out before they're a problem. Now, this happens in the all sorts of specialties, all sorts of MOSs, military occupational specialties. Like one of my old tech companies, I was the Windows side group manager and the Linux side manager. He was a Navy vet, submarines, boomers. And we were talking at lunch one day, and he goes, "Oh man, the way we used to screw with the new seamen." And he goes, "If they're going to snap, I need them to snap on shore, not when we're underwater for 4 months." So you need to figure out who can hack it and who it's not, and you start that with good candidates. And anybody that shows you anything that's negative, out you go. That's not what's happening with ICE. ICE is more like the scene in Blazing Saddles where Hedley Lamar is handing out the badges. We don't need no stinking badges. If you haven't seen Blazing Saddles, it is the funniest comedy of all time. I don't think you can make it today because people are can't take a fucking joke, but it is actually the best anti-racist comedy. Even my daughter, who's like super, super, super capital L liberal, she yelled at one of her friends because her friends tried to tell her that Blazing Saddles was racist, and she was like shaking her head, like, "What? My dad showed me that movie when I was 9. That movie's anti-racist, you dummy." um, yeah, you got to start with good candidates. Then you got to go through good training. And in 6 weeks, even the ones that got 6 weeks, which I don't think were many of them, 6 weeks is not enough time to grade through everything you need to judge to what let you know it's they're good enough to get out on the street. And it's simple things like, can you read and write at least an associate degree level? You haven't don't have to have college per se, but at least your reading and writing skills are entry level collegiate. Interpersonnel communication, IPC. Can you talk to people? That was something we were proud of back in the day because talking to people solved a lot of problems. Now, sometimes they don't give you a chance to talk to them. That's a whole other story. But yeah, you need to have good interpersonnel communication. And where you put it all together is in the scenario training. Okay. Because you got to do the physical fitness, you got to do the range, you got to do the unarmed techniques, you got to do the less than lethal, the baton, the pepper spray, the taser. Um, that takes time, and it takes a lot longer than 6 weeks. And your last few weeks should all be legal and scenario training, where you have like in our academy, people that were businessmen, people who worked in restaurants, they would volunteer and come in and be actors for us. So we could go through training scenarios with live people. And there'd be a mixture of, off-duty cops and supervisors and just regular citizens from in town, a couple of college students, and, like we would have a mass casualty thing. So a couple of college students would have, fake blood and everything to get you accustomed to dealing with, the sight of blood and everything. I was in the military. I already saw that. But, they went through very extensive trainings. Again, you're not going to get that in 6 weeks. Anybody you let out the door after 6 weeks was a mistake. After Rodney King, LAPD, the first thing they did as one of their reforms, because they eventually realized they fucked up, um, is they increased the basic training academy. And after that, they required bilingual skills. you'd have to at least be able to do a basic interview and a felony traffic stop, ordering people out of the cars with their hands up because it's a armed robbery suspect or a stolen vehicle, something like that. You had to be able to do it both in English and in Spanish. Okay. You're not going to get that in 6 weeks. Like 6 weeks is such a facile number. It to me, it doesn't even make sense because a lot of people get weeded out. Like a third of the people who are going to drop are going to drop in the first couple of weeks. They just can't deal with the structure of the program. And some just realize, oh, holy shit, I thought this was for me. No, it ain't for me. I'm gonna go back and work at the post office. Hey, good, good. That's okay. Working at the post office is a great job. Okay. I love my mailman. I love the post office. Good job. Go do a good job over there. If you know you can't hack it here, go do something else. Right. So, I mean, this whole thing where, oh, yeah, we just, whipped up some training and put them on the street. That's just freaking horseshit, especially with the gear they have on. Okay. They have more gear than freaking Rangers or Green Berets in overseas. Okay, to be a Green Beret, I mean, just the main course, never mind airborne, air assault, sniper school, all the other schools they go to. My father-in-law went to, yeah, everything. Like, if there's a qualification, even Halo, jumping out of the planes at 70,000 feet, yeah, he did that like a dozen times. So he's got everything underneath the sun. Well, the actual Green Beret school, that's 18 months. And most people don't make it through. And that's another thing. There should be a dropout rate. If your training for this type of job does not have a dropout percentage, you're doing something wrong. Because you get a lot of problems with applications in the law enforcement, if we're going to be honest about this. Okay. The wannabes, the security guards that think they're Rambo, and the groupies, you do not want them with a badge. You do not want to release them on the streets at night alone. No, you do not. That would cause a problem. And getting back to Schumer and Booker write this memo. Oh, it's just a matter of retraining. That tells me you guys don't actually pay attention to much. Because I know what Congress pays attention to. The lobbyists, because when you email or send a letter to your congressman or a senator, it gets noted. It gets put in the ledger, sure. Maybe a note or two is taken about it. But do you really think most people give a shit? No. And I've had that experience out here ever since our old guy, Pete Stark, in the Central Coast went away. Because every time I would email or call Pete Stark, one of his people would call me back. Like one thing I called was like, well, the shit where they weren't getting the right bulletproof vests and the right armor in Iraq. And I was like, okay, you sent them there. Get them the goddamn gear they need. This is absurd. Either pull them out or give them the gear they need. That's the only two choices you've got. Yeah, his senior policy guy called me back. He was like, yeah, we've been screaming about this all week. I'm like, good. It's not the training. Okay, Booker, Schumer, you son of a bitches. I mean, no, it's not the training. It's the lack thereof. It's the whole premise that they don't want them properly trained. They just want a militia, a goon squad out in the street cracking walnuts, thinking they're winning some game. Because remember, everything in Trump's orbit is about winning. And what he means by winning is you lose. There is no win-win in the nationalist playbook, in the authoritarian playbook, in the meist Trumpian playbook. That doesn't exist. There is no win-win. If they win, you must lose. He's made that perfectly clear for 10 years. Well, more than 10 years. He was just a business guy back in the 80s. He did the same thing. And I'm going to draw a parallel here, which is a rough parallel, and people on the right may get mad at me. Fuck it. We have to look at our own American history, especially in a troubling country today. We had a whole bunch of people just scooped off the street, um, and they weren't deported. That's buy an Oxford dictionary, unabridged is my suggestion. The word was not deportation; it was forced exile. There's a difference. What they did was forced exile, and we sent them where? Central America. Oh, because that's just the ethical, moral hotbed of America post World War II. Not. We had a thing, and what makes ICE worse is they're not even trained. We had a thing in America called the School of Americas, where we taught some of these Central American governments to do shit. One of the ones we taught was El Salvador. The funding skyrocketed in the whole anti-communist end of the Cold War era with Reagan in 81. And I'm not saying that like it was our Rangers or intelligence guys or Green Berets who told them to do this specifically. I'm not saying that at all. But they took the training we gave them and they used it for the most authoritarian, nefarious purposes that you can possibly imagine. One of the units that was created in El Salvador was, and if I'm probably murdering this name, the Alcalatal Battalion. I'm sorry, I'm probably screwing that up. Um, they went freaking nuts, and they killed about 1,000 people, most of them children, all to weed out the deplorables, the bad guys. They wanted to make El Salvador great again. Okay. And I'm not making like this super tight direct parallel here, but I'm saying is when you've got bad policy, even with trained people, it could all go to total shit. And in El Salvador in the 80s, it went to total shit. Okay. Look what happened in Yugoslavia in the 90s. The world would not intervene fast enough. Eventually, everybody did. America, NATO, Russia, we all got in there as partners. Okay. But that was after it turned into a 4 or 5-way shit show. Okay. And the Serbian militias and then the counter militias um, had no discipline, had no morals, had no rule of law, and they just committed one war crime after another. And so did the regular Yugoslavian army. The last dude they were hunting, I can never say his name right. Too many consonants and accents in his name. But he was one of the generals. They finally found him up in the hills. A lot of my friends that were in the 8th MP in West Germany, they all ended up in the Fifth Corps units down in Yugoslavia. They were there for years. Some of my friends were there for many years, and they were actually on missions going to find this asshole. They never could till later. The French, I think it was the French, got him. We got him to The Hague. Um, this is the guy that do you see that sign with Christy Nome from this week or the week before? One of yours, one of ours, all of yours. It was the label on the lectern in her press conference. That's an old Nazi slogan. Um, I think it was the British captured the general that wiped out the Czechoslovakian town because one SS officer got murdered, uh, uh, and they decided to kill everybody 14 years and older in the town. Uh, every male. Uh, this general in Yugoslavia, he walked artillery through a village because a small band of fighters had retreated into the village. So he walked artillery through a village of thousands. Um, and that was a war crime. That was not a legitimate action of war. That was totally against the rules of engagement. And I'm talking about walking artillery. They started on the edge of town and walked artillery every 5 meters till they got through the whole village, blowing up everything. They didn't care who was in there. Dog, cat, cow, sheep, man, woman, child, parakeet, didn't give a shit. They leveled the whole town. Yeah, he's sitting in an international prison at The Hague for ostensibly the rest of his life. Um, when they got done with the shit show down in El Salvador in the 80s, going back to that for a second, 1 out of 5 people was displaced in El Salvador. And what I blame the United States for in that case, in the 80s, I blamed them for willful blindness. Okay, they were killing Catholics, including the priests and the nuns, and we knew they were doing it. Then they started killing a whole bunch of other people. We all knew that was going down in Central America. In the 90s, I think more of our problem was political, a lack of political fortitude. Um, you do not want a war starting in Yugoslavia since Ferdinand was assassinated where modern Yugoslavia is now. Um, that's what started World War One. Well, it started the Great War. I'm of the school thinking that World War the World War One, World War Two were actually just one big giant war, and they had a little baby war in Asia that set up the Great War in the late 19th century, and then in the 20th century we went completely apeshit with mechanized warfare and slaughtered tens of millions of people. Um, so yeah, but back in the 80s in El Salvador, it was willful blindness. Anybody today claiming that we can just polish a turd with ice and make it better, that's willful blindness. When you're watching video after video of them shooting projectiles in the face of people at point blank range, severely injuring one kid, he's blind in an eye now. Okay. And not to mention the in custody deaths. Let me get on that for a second. I didn't even think about that until I just thought of it. In custody deaths. There apparently is a shit ton, dozens of them last year. Okay. This is what's also changed since my day. An in custody death, whether it was in the MPs or whether it was the civilian department, an in custody death was actually worse than an officer involved shooting. Like in custody deaths should not happen. And if they do, it better be like a spontaneous stroke or a heart attack or something. It better not be lack of treatment, lack of care, lack of clearance to be in the facility in the first place. When you have somebody complaining of pain or illness, we have to take them to the emergency room and get a clearance. Like our detention officers had the authority to tell us, peace officers, they would not accept the prisoner because they were too drunk, too injured, too out of it, cognitive wise, and they needed medical clearance. And it was totally their right to tell us to go to the hospital and get a doctor's note before they get booked. Because there was an actual form the doctors filled out that we had to carry back to jail to allow them to be booked. Why did we go through all this? Because we didn't want in custody deaths, and we didn't have one the whole time I was there because we didn't fuck around. Not just with the hospital stuff, but it was like suicide watch. Suicide watch. We were standing right there staring at the prisoner. There's no leaving him alone and checking back on him in 15 minutes. He could be dead in 10. He'd be dead in 5 if he does it right. Most of the time, it's taking off clothing, tearing it up, and using it as a ligature. Or you get the self-harm people. That gets really dangerous. They'll start bashing their head into the bars and stuff like that. And then you got to restrain them and take them to the hospital because now they need stitches or now they have a concussion. Okay. You don't need them croaking in the cell. That's apparently not a problem. Apparently not a problem for ICE. To say that's wrong is it's silly because that's such an understatement. You're not providing basic medical care that we provide to convicted felons, including people on death row. We treat convicted terrorists at the Supermax in Florence, Colorado, better than you're treating somebody who didn't do their paperwork properly. I have a moral problem with that. W 1 or 2, like I said, maybe it was a heart attack, just couldn't get the CPR going in time, or it's one of those heart attacks, like, what do they call them? The widow makers? My brother had one. He didn't die, though, he got to the hospital in time. Same heart attack Kevin Smith, the actor and director, had. He made it to the hospital in time. The doctor told him that he was so baked that night because he was doing a show. He goes, "Were you high tonight?" And he goes, "Yeah, I was baked out of my mind." He goes, "That was actually a good thing. It kept you calm, and it probably saved your life during the widowmaker heart attack." So it could be a stroke. Um, uh, could be a heart attack, sure, but I think the number was 53? No, 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 something's up. And I said the same thing locally when the county jails around here, before some of the sheriffs got in trouble, some of them were convicted and some of the deputies were convicted. They started reporting too many deaths, and I started doing the back of envelope math. I'm going, no, 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 this is not a medical issue. This is a core custodial issue. And everything that I was worried about came true. It was people complaining about medical problems not being taken to the hospital. It was abuse of prisoners. In one case, a criminal homicide. You shouldn't. The basic rule. Now, I'm gonna go way back. Chief McNamara, um, back in the '80s and early '90s. He was later he was a PhD. Um, when he was a chief, he ended up going working as a researcher at Stanford at the institute up there after he retired from law enforcement. Uh, Chief McNamara said something super, super critical back in the day that was so important. He said, anytime you shoot an unarmed civilian, you have a problem. Period. He didn't say, when you shoot an unarmed person, excuse, 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 excuse. Like, I understand now that the shovel was an excuse, according to the family. That was the second guy to get shot in the leg in Minnesota. That story's already breaking down. Uh, Anytime you shoot an unarmed civilian, you have a problem. And the bigger problem is they've allowed open carry to anybody with no background checks. I mean, any felon can carry an open gun now. I know they exclude felons in the statute, but how does a beat cop know? Unless you know the guy's a felon, how do you know that that guy's a felon with a gun? It's literally anybody can walk around with a exposed or a concealed weapon in some states now, like Ohio. And I mean anyone. Okay. So now it's even tougher for cops because, you literally have to wait. Like, it's now wild, wild west. You have to wait for them to draw. It's probably a good reason I worked out so much and practiced so much at the range with speed shooting, which is another thing I don't think ICE is doing. Because if they ever get in, I mean, they're all tactical geared up. What happens when they get in real shit? And I'm not talking like one guy taking pot shots at them, like the facility in Texas. Yeah, that sucks. You don't like to hear the sound of that whiz going by your head. I get it. But I'm talking about a real problem where you have a multiple threat scenario, and tactically they have taken the advantage. Do these guys have enough training after somewhere between 0 and 6 weeks to handle that scenario? I mean, we train constantly for it in the military police, constantly, both for rear echelon combat theater stuff and patrol stuff. We were in West Germany. We got the mile system, the laser system that, you put in the blanks and the lasers fire off and it's super accurate. So you know when you actually get hit or hit other people. The first time you walk into a machine gun ambush, you learn a lesson. I'm just really glad I learned that with the mile system because it's all blanks and lasers. Because yeah, we got our ass kicked the first time brutally. Are you guys even doing 2 3 shooter scenarios? Never mind a heavy armament scenario. I mean, maybe some of these guys are real shooters. Through civilian life. I don't. You don't have to be in the military or police. I mean, I met civilians are pretty darn good shots. The best guys I've seen shoot is the top end of law enforcement, but we're only talking like 1 or 2%. And the Green Berets I hung out with on base when I was on the West Coast. We all hung out at the range Saturday afternoons. Man, a couple of those guys, they all shot well. Of course, they're all Green Berets. Some of them shot like John frickin' Wick. I mean, they could beat me, and I'm pretty damn good. Um, I was expert in everything I ever picked up, and I'm super super good. Like I qualified multiple times, um, putting all 40 rounds in the head of the target, starting at 25 meters. Like one range thing, I was working undercover, so I woke up late because we were out on a mission the night before. I'm like, oh, I gotta get my stuff there. So I throw my BDUs on. I usually wear civilian clothes, but I throw my BDU on. I found my soft cap, you know, found my concealed holster. I just showed up to range, just BDU with a concealed weapon, right? In my clips in my pockets, my magazines. And the range sergeant, staff sergeant, I was a sergeant, he was a staff sergeant. He goes, "You're out of uniform, sergeant." I go, "I'm in my daily uniform, staff sergeant. I mean, this is the way we go to range every day." Actually, we didn't even put on uniforms. And when we went to the range in the other cover scenes, we went in civilian clothes to the county range off base. Um, and I did the whole qualification, 25 in, 50 rounds, and I'm getting my target. And the staff sergeant's one of the he goes, "Sergeant, that's staff sergeant. What's up?" He goes, "Didn't I tell you to shoot center mass?" I go, "Yes, you did. And that's exactly what I did, staff sergeant." And he's looking at my target, looking at me, looking at the target. I go, "Staff sergeant, the people we go up against, they wear bulletproof vests. Shooting him in the chest doesn't do much. Shooting him in the face, that stops him." I just walked away. Yeah, so I could do 40 for 40 in the face. Are these guys good enough to do that? Did they get that level 0 to 6 weeks? Maybe a couple will have that skill coming in, but you really what they've done is they've called in a bunch of extras. Like this is a movie set. And they go, "Okay, anybody that can be here today, we're going to dress you up as a street militia and we're going to put you out in the street. Action." That's not how any of this shit is done. And if they're clocking in overtime and they're working 12, 14, 16-hour days on street patrols and they're working 6, 7 days a week, according to a report I read, what about in-service training? What's happening there? None? You've already done some things that are questionable. Other than sending out a PowerPoint slide, Bovino keeps doing that. He keeps sending out PowerPoint slides to remind them about their training. Some of them, the training they are just getting now. And if the training is just email of a PowerPoint slide deck, wow, not good. Not good. Now, I wrote a little essay. I hope some people will go look it up in my essay list in my posts. Why you need, I wrote a 3-part series. Why this generation of police isn't working. And this was more in the protest, bank protest, BLM protest, post 9/11 whole thing forward. So I wrote a 3-part series, and the last one was why you need good law enforcement, because any civilized society does, and many countries do have. I worked with the Polizei in West Germany. The Polizei is an extraordinarily professional police force. Okay. Being an old cop, my wife being an old dispatcher, we watched some of the cop videos on YouTube, the American ones, like the pursuit ones. Well, I'll also watch some of the European ones. I tell you what, every time I see the Swedish cops, they impress me. Guy with a hammer, and not one of them is like freaking out. They're like, okay, let's do this. And they all take out their rubber, spring sticks, which they carry as batons. One person's got the pepper spray in case he really needs a shot. And yeah, they had to whack him a couple of times. He's freaking out. I think he's all messed up by the way he was acting on the video. And they just whacked him, a couple of times, got him to the ground, didn't kneel on his neck, quickly put him in handcuffs, put him in the car. A minute and a half later, there's an ambulance there. There's paramedics checking on him. And, not at any time did anybody get really seriously worked up. Okay. When I'm seeing the guys in these videos online about ICE, I see a lot of guys getting worked up over nothing because they're being told just to escalate and play the alpha bro Pete Hegseth style persona. It's a very idiotic persona, but that's what they're being told to do. And um, like going back to the Green Berets for a second, my father-in-law, who I've known forever, I don't think I've ever heard him raise his voice other than one time because his son really had fucked up. Well, I've known him for decades. I mean, weird shit can happen in life, on the news, with the family, whatever. And he is stoic, stoic, stoic. One of the guys back in my day, he was Delta Force, not just Green Beret, but he got onto the squadrons then, Delta. And calmest dude I ever met. Never yelled at anybody. He like literally, I was out doing a ride along with him, and no, it wasn't him. I was out with Watsonville, and Watsonville was telling me about this. He went on with Rowdy, and he goes, Rowdy? Oh yeah, yeah. He's come down to Monterey. He's rode with me, and he goes, yeah, I rode with him. And three guys came up to us in an alley, and one guy put his hand like he was going to show his gun, and Rowdy just whipped out his 45, and he's looked at it and goes, you really don't want to do that with me. Leave. Because he was busy doing something else. He's already looking for somebody else. He's like, I'm not dealing with you three dickheads right now. Just leave. And he knew one of them was armed. And he goes, yeah, that's how we roll. I'm like, oh my God. But I don't see that stoicness. Like, the 10th group guys that would back up some of the security missions. They're like, hey, I'm Carl. That's Bob. That's Mark. How you doing? What do you guys need? You guys need any ammo? No, we're good. We're chalked up. We're good. Okay. All right. We'll be right over there. Thanks, dude. I, I don't see any of that. Now, sometimes you do have to yell at somebody. I'm not being naive here. Sometimes you really have to like tell them, knock it the fuck off, Um, but you have to give them clear directions. And when you're applying force, you have to use it in a way that gets your instructions complied with. That's why you need a combination of a good unharmed technique and a good strategy to get them to do exactly what you want them to do. It's like, you know, when you have minor resistance, do you just start punching them in the back of the head? No. Do you turn that wrist and grab those fingers and get that wrist lock applied just a little tighter, just to let them know, no, 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 no. You're going into handcuffs. Don't make this stupid. Like a guy in a bar who's been in a fight and he's been placed under citizen's arrest, so he has to go. It's not my choice. He's under private person's arrest. I have to take him. If I don't take them, I'm under arrest. So guess who's going to jail, pal? I'm like, no, 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 no. This is a problem for you in court, not a problem for you here. Relax. Done. Walk them out of the bar, get it done with. Be as quiet as possible. Again, I'm not seeing any of that. And even some of their riot control, I'm going to use that euphemistically. Um, if you don't want to control a riot or a protest, you're doing a great job. I've been at the screaming Mimi abortion clinic protests. Been there, done that. Okay. People get angry, people get emotional. The best thing you can do in those situations is simple command presence and give them as many warnings as you think the situation will stand. Sometimes it's a few warnings. Come on. I've already told you a couple times. Get back on the sidewalk. Okay. Then the captain will come over. We have a court order. Your side gets into the street or steps on that any of these addresses on that side of the street, because the clinic was on that side of the street, because the judge physically separated them to keep the peace. He's like, no, no, no. Last time I let you guys within 15 feet of each other, you started throwing punches. So the judge was like, absolutely not. Okay. And we kept telling people, did you understand? We too are under a court order. We do not have a say in how this is going to go. Whoever the judge was, Judge Sullivan said this was it. So guess what's happening? Okay. You step off the sidewalk again, you are going to go to jail, and you are also going to go separately to a contempt of court hearing. And the reason you're going to go, because I don't want to go for a contempt of court hearing. Okay. The judge said keep them physically separated. Neither group is now, it's mostly the other side, but one supporter of the other side kind of made the other side look pretty bad. Um, I'm a guy who's like, I'm pro science and medicine. If you need a procedure your doctor says you need to protect your life, that's a private medical decision. Nobody in the state house or some dickhead looking for a media interview should be deciding anybody's medical care. That is the dumbest fucking shit I've ever heard in my life. Um, am I like pro-abortion? No, I'm a dad of three. I had three babies. Would I ever interfere with somebody else's medical decision, especially when their life is on the line? Absolutely not. And I know, like, a lot of the things they did on that topic, I wrote essays about it. Like the Dobbs decision will be enforced like the drug war. And what you're seeing in Minneapolis is the setup to use this in the abortion issue too. I know I'm flying around tonight, but this is all actually really tied together. This is not Woody Harrelson in what was the movie 2020 or whatever the movie was with John Cusack doing the radio broadcast. The, you have to read Project 2025. You have to listen to the real evil bastards in the background, like Steve Bannon. Um, Watch what he's talking about. They mean this shit. They're not kidding. They're gleeful. This is a clusterfuck in the middle of Main Street. It gives them the excuse to execute the next phase of their already written down plan. Now, I wrote an essay in August, more than a year before the election, trying to warn people that, oh my God, do you guys see what's about to happen? Now, what's happening in Minneapolis and what's happening with ICE overall? Am I dismayed? Oh, yeah, that's an understatement. Am I surprised? No. The only thing I regret now, I didn't put $1,000 down on this in Polymarket. How many months would it be taken before they were shooting white chicks in the street? Because they know who's going to come out and protest. Their intelligence told them that. White suburban chicks love protesting. For both sides, by the way. They know who's showing up. So this is, if you got to put the compendium together, it starts with the first term with Dear Leader Pornstar Humper. I don't really think, other than his like grandpa with dementia complaints he always has, his grievance and his animus, he hadn't really thought of any of the structure of any of this that is going through, whether it's tariffs like a maniac or um, blocking 72 countries from entering the United States. He started out with some general complaints slash grievances slash animus, sure, and a bunch of racism, sure. Now he's got the mouthpieces sitting in his ear because you got professional mouthpieces. They're the ones that actually author the real policy you don't see. Everybody thinks the policy comes out of Congress and the regulatory agencies. No, they come from the think tanks and the lobbyists. Everybody should realize they mapped this out when Trump lost the first time. Now, many of them were actually horrified about the insurrection and what Trump led against the United States. But then they went, well, he's the one that's going to give us what we want. And you can just list down all the bad stuff that they want. Everything from an ethno state to the elimination of the middle class because we're in their way of their greatness. So you fast forward to ICE being a bunch of Goombas causing more problems than they're solving. And being told right up front, like one of the biggest things that I really don't like they're doing, and I know the DOJ is captured under Todd Blanche and who's the day-to-day operator, and Pam Bondi, the AG. The DOJ is not responding to an intentional misuse of a U.S. code statute. They keep saying that Section 111 is a felony. No, it's what we call, or we've always called, a wobbler. Depending on the circumstances, it can be a misdemeanor or it can be a felony. Now, of course, the felony has to have some serious shit happen, like, you know, an aggravated assault or battery happen, okay, or a use of a weapon, okay. Merely being in the presence of an ICE officer is not a felony nor a misdemeanor under Section 111. But they're on videotape time and time again claiming your mere presence is arrestable as a felony. Why? So they can disappear you to Fort Bliss or the black site in Louisiana, or whatever shit show they're running. And everybody, I hope I'm not the only one that's noticed that this has become much, much, much more about detention than it is deportation. Amazon. um, so none of this to me is a surprise. Now it's like, now we have to clean up. Like I'm talking about, we had a lot of work to do, whatever, however, this one, private prisons need dollars. Yeah. And they're a major, major campaign donor. They're a huge lobbyist to Congress. Okay. That's why I'm telling you, this is not a capitalism system. It hasn't been since Reagan. This is corporate socialism. The corporations and their lobbyists pretty much control the federal government and all of its policies. And as soon as they saw an opportunity to make money detaining people, including US citizens, oh yeah, they jumped right on it. And you can tell because a lot of the insider trading that's been revealed of late revolves around defense and custodial equities, stocks. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. The ISIS budget is insane. DHS's budget was already insane. But it doesn't seem like they're 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 using the excuse that this is all an enforcement immigration because we've been invaded. When all the experts say, we really don't know what the hell you're talking about. Is there some people here who have committed a felony that should not be here and they should go? Yeah. Is it 11 million? Probably not. And the way you could weed them out was the same way Reagan weeded them out. Oh my God, we can't offer them asylum. Okay, and a war on Main Street's better than that? Let's see. The Mexican restaurant still has a staff. The food still gets picked. Oh, by the way, the blueberries and something else is rotting in the fields now because they can't get enough labor. Um, we can have the labor, we can have a good economy from that labor, or we can have a war on Main Street and make a lot of money for the private prisons and a bunch of goombas with super high salaries and $50,000 bonus checks. Now I wonder, like, what does a starting FBI agent make? They can't be making that kind of money. I'm sure a senior person makes that kind of money, but hold on a second. How much does a starting FBI agent make a year? Okay, they get $50,000 bonuses and they're bragging on the street how they're making 200,000 this year. A starting FBI agent makes $51,000 and they all have college degrees. They all have to pass the FBI academy, which is hard as hell. The weed out is super high at the FBI academy. This is just bribing a bunch of goombas to go kick the shit out of people. Then when people protest, you're going to claim it's an insurgency. You see all the threat inflation that's going on? Nothing is a problem. Nothing is an issue. Nothing is a crime. Nothing what it is. Everything is a insurgency. Everything is an emergency. Everything is an insurrection, which is absurd. The literal leader of an insurrection who levied war against the United States because he lost an election claims there's insurrectionists working against his government. That's dictatorship 101. That's like Gaddafi shit. That's Idi Amin shit. That's fucking Marcos taking over the Philippines. Go on YouTube, listen to Jesse Ventura talk about he was there when Marcos took over. Yeah. And the whole fact that we have machine gun toting troops in the streets that have only 0 to 6 weeks worth of training, and no real rules or regulations to uphold, and no ethos, by the way. Um, like again, I'm not surprised, but damn, am I sad about it? Because if you really wanted to lower crime, you'd be doing something completely different. You'd be doing several things completely different. Because when you look to Canada or the Nordic model, or the Irish model now, Ireland's kicking ass as an economy, and the average citizen's doing great, or Japan or New Zealand, what they're doing and what we're doing is two different things. Nobody goes bankrupt in those countries because they got a medical bill. We're canceling people's health care to pay for ICE and the invasion of Venezuela, so dear leader and his campaign donor can run a slush fund out of Qatar. This is what happens when you don't have a functional Senate. That's why I mean we need to get out and vote. I'm going to wrap it up. I babbled enough tonight. I'm pretty frustrated, but I hope we got some information out of this. Um, Vote. We have to get out and vote. It's not just us getting out and vote. It's everybody. It's our family. It's our friends. If you're not voting, you're fucking surrendering. Be independent. Vote independent. Run for local office as an independent. Vote for younger people. Okay. Know your candidate. Don't blind vote anymore. Don't assume because you know their name, they do right by you. Democrat or Republican. Get the clowns out. Put pressure on people. Don't stop talking about it. Like if Schumer will not lead, Schumer must be replaced. If Cory Booker is going to soft shoe this because he thinks he's got a shot at a VP position in the upcoming election, tell him to sit down and shut the fuck up. The problem is here and now. I no longer care about any of yours political ambitions. I'll talk to you soon. Until next time. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Hope. Until next time, think about it.